little stuff from about every angle. I still think it comes down to the base premise that I wrote about a couple weeks ago, and the fact that I think Johnny opened the door for Brian Hoyer by some of his behavior off the season, and that reputation coming back to roost, that he didn't do the off the field stuff that's necessary. And I think that put Brian Hoyer back in the conversation. I think Mike Pettin feels more comfortable with Brian Hoyer right now. He's a first-year head coach. He wants to hit the ground running. And the fact that he, indicated he's going to name the starter tomorrow after week 2 of the preseason indicates it's going to be Brian Hoyer, because you're not going to start Hoyer for 2 games in the preseason and then give the starting job to Johnny Manziel. That's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So if you read the tea leaves, and I think it's a comfort factor, I really do. At this stage of the game, he just feels more comfortable with the veteran.
Oh, I agree with you there. And I said the same thing. I said with it coming that quickly and with things happening the way they did, I mean, Manziel would have to go out. He would have to catch lightning in a bottle. Really, he would have to blow the doors off of something tonight for that to change. You're right. When he said probably Tuesday, I said, man, this thing is done. And you could really hear it, even though Manziel was very quick to say, don't take my comments out of context. You could hear it in both quarterbacks. I was joking with some friends. I said, dude, I wouldn't be surprised if these guys already know how this thing, I wouldn't be surprised if they've both been talked to by their coaches and said, well, this isn't official, but because you could almost hear it in both of their voices. Hoyer feeling he's going to get the first shot, and Manziel kind of resigned that he may not be, and that he's not worried about it, because it's not about who starts, do I start week 1 or whatever. But did you get that from their press conferences this weekend too?
Yeah, I did, and you're right. It doesn't. The only aspect, and I wrote about this a couple weeks ago. The only aspect that changes is the fact that now Hoyer has his chance, because if he continues to play well, and if he plays lights out, he's not going to get benched. That's just the nature of the NFL. But Johnny Manziel, on the other hand, understands that he's the number 1 draft choice. He's the first-round pick. And he's thought of by the franchise as the future of the organization. So he has that comfort level, and I think he has to realize that. And, the only aspect of it that has changed is the fact that now Brian Hoyer has a chance to seize the job. And obviously, if Manziel was starting week 1, he wouldn't have that opportunity, barring injury, of course.
Right.
But that's understood with any starting quarterback in the NFL. So what I believe, the only thing that has shifted in my mind is the fact that now this, it's a very small, the door is ajar only a small bit. But, Brian Hoyer can get his foot in that door and knock it down. The job is his. Simple
Absolutely.
As that.
And we've talked about that. I mentioned it Friday that, to me, and I want, and you, and especially looking at what you and I have talked about early in the offseason, Manziel opening the door himself for this to happen. But going into training camp and the way things had went, this was, to me, the way camp was always going to play out, unless Johnny Manziel did what some people thought he would do, which was just go Johnny football and win and just snatch this thing. But with that not happening, other than that, the camp really kind of played out mostly the way the Browns said it would the whole time, and everything in my gut said. So when people are surprised, I'm not really surprised, although I always go back to what you said. I keep quoting it when we talk about this, is that Brian Hoyer got opportunities that he may not have gotten, and I think what I was talking about with Mike Pettin, that explains what that phenomenon that you mentioned about him getting opportunity that a lot of other places wouldn't even have given him, that he would have never even been in the discussion when you talked about the Browns being more than fair with him over the course of the beginning of this thing. And that's so true. And I think it goes to what I mentioned there about not just the respect as a competitor, but he mentioned specifically to Ashley in that article that I saw things in him when I was preparing for him that I said, hey, this is different. I think there's some legit stuff here with this guy, and I think that still sticks with him today.
Yeah, and people have to realize there's a dichotomy between a coach and a general manager, and obviously, in most situations there have been guys who've handled both. That you're seeing that less and less because it's just two full-time jobs. And,
that's a lot.
And coaches that tend to handle personnel tend to burn out pretty quickly. But you have to realize that basically you have Ray Farmer. Or any general manager, picking the players, and then the coach coaches those players. So in Mike Pettine's mind, it's not necessary. He doesn't have the same thought as Ray Farmer or any other general manager that picks a guy in the first round. When he hits that field in practice, training camp, preseason games, and certainly regular season games, it's all about winning, and it's all about succeeding. And it's all about taking the 53 players you're given and trying to utilize them the best way you possibly can. So, coaches are much more willing to look at production than perhaps general managers who are, by human nature, desirous of their draft picks, especially their highly touted draft choices, first, second, third round guys. You'll see them get chance after chance, time and again, because, that's what general managers are graded on, and they want those guys to succeed. But coaches tend to have more of an open mind and look at things as they formulate on the field, whether it's, the practice field or whether it's, tonight in the preseason game. And, I think this clear, it's any rookie, and it's not just Johnny Manziel, and we kind of highlight some of the off-the-field stuff, and sometimes that's unfair, and I've done it myself, and I'll admit it, because Joe Namath succeeded pretty well, and he liked to have fun. So it's not like you can't do it, but I think today's NFL is different. It's much more complicated. I don't know if that's good or bad, but offenses are much more sophisticated than they were in say the Namath days. And the playbook is thicker, and the mentality is, especially at that position, especially at the quarterback position, the mentality for most coaches is that you need a hard worker. You need a guy who's going to be not only the leader of your team, but the guy who's going to set an example for everyone. He's going to show up first at practice. He's going to be the last to leave. All those cliches you hear time and time again. But it's true of the quarterback position, or the belief that it's true, really permeates through coaches, every single coach in this league. I don't know one who doesn't think that as far as that particular position, because by nature it demands leadership. And I think that's where you start seeing some of the comfort that Mike Pettine has with Brian Hoyer, or at least more comfort. And some of that just has to do with the fact that he's a veteran guy and he knows how to be a professional. And any rookie's going to learn. It doesn't matter if it's Johnny Manziel. It doesn't matter if it's, Blake Bortles, Teddy Bridgewater. It doesn't matter if it's, going back to the Andrew Luck, RG3 draft. Every young quarterback has to go through it. But it's a very difficult position because there's so many more demands on you, not only on the field, but off the field as the face of the franchise. And I think right now, like most coaches, he feels a little bit more comfortable with a veteran over a rookie.
And I wanted to jump in on the flip side of that, because this past week, and you and I talked a little bit about this in the middle of the week when we talked, but now that the week is past, I can be a little more definitive about this. I see my man Vashon in the chat room brought this up too, and I had a similar feeling about wanting to see Manziel start the second game, because why not? Let's see what he can go out there and do. But the thing I go to, and let's forget people that want to throw that being late to a meeting thing. Yeah, maybe that had 2% to do with it. Maybe that was factored in, but that's nothing. To me, what changed the Browns' mind, I think, was Johnny's week of practice last week. He had arguably his worst week of practice during the week that everybody was hyped up that he was going to get his biggest opportunity. He had a lot of trouble with the no huddle. He had a lot of trouble in even some of the similar drills from the week before. He just had a rookie week. He had what happens sometimes, and I believe that last week's practice shook the Browns' belief that he could be ready that quickly. I really do. I think that for as much as they'll tell you, well, we could coach anybody up, I believe that really shaky week of practice made them say, there is no reason for us to rush this thing. So I think that whatever temptation there was may have been kind of petered out by the week of practice both guys had, because in contrast, Brian Hoyer had one of his better, more confident weeks of practice since it started. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I hate to try to get into a coach's head because there's so many things they could be thinking. And some guys do take, meetings seriously. Look at Tom Coughlin and the famous, Michael Strahan incident. When Mike was late because he was 3 minutes early. He was supposed to be 10 minutes early. So, there's some disciplinarians that are very, very strict. And again, you have to look at the position. And they want the quarterback to be an example. They want the quarterback to set an example for other players on the team. And that's the last guy you want being late to a meeting. Normally, I'm not saying that that's what,
right.
That's what turned things for Mike Penton. But it's possible. It is very possible because of the position he plays. But you're right. I mean, practice certainly has more to do with that. There's some thought that, even that, because Johnny Manziel was known on the college level as a game day guy. On college, obviously Saturdays. As a guy who would show up on Saturdays.
Right.
Not necessarily going to do great things in practice, but when he got on the field on Saturday, he turned it on, and he turned into this, phenomenal player that won the Heisman Trophy, and we all know what he was able to do at Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. So there's that process that you let him go, you let him start in preseason week 2. He excels to a high degree, and all of a sudden there's the clamoring that people want him to start week 1, and maybe that's not what Mike Penton wanted. Maybe he wants to pump the brakes and bring him along slowly. And we all know, most of us who follow this game, it doesn't matter if he plays well tonight or he plays poorly. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter at all, but you know what preseason football is, what preseason football is.
Yes.
It's not the end of the world if he performs poorly, and it's certainly not an indication of all that much if he lights things up. I mean, preseason football is what it is. There's not going to be any game planning on defense by the opposition. Everything's going to be very vanilla. That's why I look at individual, battles. You sort of look at, can a wide receiver get off a line against press coverage? Can your linebacker cover a running back out of the flat? Can your left tackle handle the best pass rusher on the field? That's really the things you take out of preseason games because nobody's game planning for anybody. So there's a mentality that, maybe this kid shows up and Mike Penton, bottom line is Mike Penton doesn't think he's ready and doesn't want the headache of him throwing for 2 touchdowns and people clamoring to say he should start week 1.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, it's hard enough being a rookie head coach in the NFL, to add that many more things to it. I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it, and I'm with you. And all along, I thought unless the decision was predetermined, or maybe it was predetermined in the other direction, but either way, I really thought this was the smart way to go. And here's something Browns fans don't want to hear, but me just looking at it as a business product, and let's just take my feelings off the table. I'm Jimmy Haslam, and I'm going, okay, my product can go well on the field this season, but as we know, things can go poorly, especially when you're still building a team and trying to move forward. So there's also the side benefit of the second opening day, almost, if you want to look at it that way. The reboost of the energy. Let's say things don't go well and you're halfway through the season and you're 2-6 or whatever, and the Browns say, okay, you know what, it's time to make the move. Then you do have the kind of the rebirth, the boosting of the season, and that's a whole nother way. I'm just saying, if I'm Jimmy Haslam, that's another reason that I'm not panicking. But I thought